Hi, I'm Skyler from the Sky, and today I'm going to be doing my April TBR and what I am playing video game-wise in quarantine. I'm doing my TBR slightly differently than how I've seen other booktubers do it. I'm doing mine with a book bingo aspect to it. So I'm thinking about this is how I'm going to do all my TBRs. I'm going to do a book bingo and I'm going to make the cards, and if I can figure it out, I'm going to have a link to it down below for y'all. I had to print this thing off twice because it didn't really work quite well the first time. But here's try number one. This looks fine, but there's little ones like right here that's really fuzzy and blurry, and they look kind of washed out and faded. I think my printer is trying to run out of ink, so I'm going to have to figure that out. The next one looks good. I did it on a different printer, but it's really small. There's nothing wrong with it in particular, but it's going to be hard for me to talk about this in the video with it being this small. I'm going to use this bigger one. Basically, how this works is you can pick up practically any book you want to read. You can see if it fits into any of these categories. A lot of them could actually fit into multiple ones. Like, say you pick up a book that's a fairy tale retelling with a pink cover, and so right there is two. Right there it can cover two spaces. It's up to you however you want to do it. It's your life. I'm not going to tell you how to live it if you do decide to do this. So, how I picked my books is I made this before I picked my books, but I didn't use it to decide what books I was going to read. What I actually did is I've got 3 piles on a table in my room of books, and they're in the exact order of how I want to read them. And I've actually got them set up to be a regular book, a manga book, a regular book, a manga book. Because there was one time where I was reading lots of manga, and then I think I read like 4 or 5 manga books in a row. And then I tried to pick up a regular book, and I was like, wait a minute, I'm trying to read this thing backwards. I was trying to flip the pages the different way, and it just doesn't work for me, so I've got to break them up so that way I can still know how to read correctly and I don't get confused. So I just went over to my piles and I just picked up some. I already had some of these picked out and set to the side because some of these books are from the library. And some of them I just had set up because I knew I wanted to read them next. And from there, I just went over and picked up 4 more books from the piles. It was after I went on ahead and just picked up the books that I actually looked at my bingo card and was like, can I do this? Maybe. So I'm going to go over the books I'm reading in April with you all. The first book is actually a continuation from March, and it is The Lost Continent by 2E.T. Sutherland. It is the 11th book in the Wings of Fire series. I'm actually borrowing this from the library. So on my bingo card, The Wings of Fire, The Lost Continent, will cover fantasy and sci-fi, and I'm not for sure on this one, but I'm thinking it might also cover In the Wilderness. If you've all read it, let me know down below in the comments because I actually kind of want to know, but I know I'll also find out pretty soon because I'm hoping to finish it really soon, within the next couple of days. We'll see. It's been kind of hectic even though I'm in quarantine, but I'm hoping to finish it really soon. But let me know down in the comments if you know for sure. But since, even though it can possibly cover 2 of the spaces, say it does actually end up covering In the Wilderness, I would probably only have it work for one of them, and I would decide which one after I figure out where my other books sit in the bingo chart. And that's how I would do it. So this book is about dragons, and the first 5 books were about a prophecy where these dragonettes had to save the world. The next 5 books were about a different prophecy, but also where they have to save the world. And this one is about a new prophecy, and it's set in a different continent than the first 10 books. And it even has different kind of dragons. So the one continent had, I think, like 8 different kinds of dragons, possibly around there, maybe even a little bit more, could have had 9. This one has 2 because one of the tribes went extinct in a war. That is revealed very early on, so I'm not spoiling anything, I swear. No spoilers. And it's just, right now where I'm at, it's starting to pick up speed, but at the beginning it was kind of slow, to be honest. I am also planning on doing a review on this with the new idea that I had to do reviews. So if you want to check that out, once I do it, I have to figure out how YouTube works exactly with the description box, but I'll try to put a link to that if you're interested in watching it down below whenever I finish this and once I post that video. So now I'm going to move on to the next book. The next book on my TBR is The 7 Deadly Sins, Volume 4. The title begins with like the, a, something like that, where it's just like an article word. Ooh, we're getting into English right there. But if it just begins with a word that's kind of insignificant, I don't really want to say that. If it was anywhere else in the title, it would be like lowercase. So if anywhere else in the title, it'd be a lowercase word. I'm going to skip that and just go right to the next letter. My biggest examples are the, a, I think is, to, things like that. So in my case, and it starts with an S, which means it can work for 2 of these on my chart. So a friend actually recommended this entire series to me. It can work for recommended by a friend and starts with R, O, S, or E. I think this book can also land into fantasy and sci-fi though. Yeah, actually it can. So it can actually work for 3 spaces because it can land into fantasy as well. So far in the series, it's a decent series. There's times where I'm like, but so far I do overall like it. And they did turn this into a anime series on Netflix, if you're interested in this. I got this from my library as well. It was in the teen section. This one is about, it's about these big criminals, like they were awful criminals. But the way I'm understanding it is that they got wrongly convicted. I'm not for sure on that, but they may have. And they actually have like magical aspects to them. They can control different things, like one of them can control Earth. Some are just freakishly strong. The criminals are called the 7 Deadly Sins, and a princess has to go out and find them all to help her kingdom and save them from the 10 Commandments. I'm not quite sure how I feel about that, saying the 7 Deadly Sins are like the good guys in this book, but I'm just gonna roll with it because so far it is a good book and I want to see where it goes. The next book in my TBR is The Sun and Her Flowers by Rupi Kaur. I hope I'm saying that right. This will actually fit into 2 different categories. It would fit into flowers on cover and starts with R, O, S, or E. This book is a poetry book. It's full of poems by Rupi Kaur. And I honestly don't know much about it, so I can't really tell you anything. I did read Milk and Honey last month, and I'm wanting to see where this goes. I got them both for Christmas 2 years ago. I'm really looking forward to this book because I did like Milk and Honey. It was a little surprising to me at times, but overall I did like it. So I'm hoping I'll like this book as well. On to the next book, Milk and Honey. This book would only fit into 1 category, which is reread down there at the bottom, because I read this last month, but I'm wanting to reread both this and The Sun and Her Flowers because I feel like I want to get as much as I can out of these poetry books because I feel like there is a lot of meaning to them. And I'm even going to start like putting little post-it notes and stuff in there to kind of mark things. This book is about, I'm pretty sure it's about Kaur herself and what she kind of went through. It's split into 4 parts called The Hurting, The Loving, The Breaking, The Healing. So I'm really just wanting to reread it, start marking things, so that way if there's ever a time when I want to go back and just look at something, I can just flip right to it and go, oh, there we go, and just read it and think to myself. So this book is going to be my reread. I already had it planned to reread it, And I've already had planned to reread The Sun and Her Flowers, but I'm probably going to wait until May to reread The Sun and Her Flowers. So, the next book on my TBR is Dr. Stone Volume 1. I've watched this entire anime. It got to the point where I was watching it as soon as it came out on Crunchyroll. I had loved this anime, and I can't wait for the second season. And I do highly recommend it. It's a little slow at times, but it's hilarious. The main character is a scientist dealing in a world that I think it was 2,000 years with no humans at all, because all the humans are encased in stone. And that's not a spoiler, it's part of the plot. I'm really excited to read this book to see if the anime followed it well or not. Now, where does it fall in my book bingo? It can actually cover 6 different things in my book bingo. It can cover beginning of a series. I'm not sure or not, but it might cover Caught in the Rain as well. I have to look. I know for sure it covers In the Wilderness because they're building up from nothing. They have absolutely nothing, and they're building up from that. And they are in the wilderness because that's all there is in the world anymore. There's no city, civilization, nothing. It is also in my been wanting to read, a book that you've been wanting to read, because like I said, ever since I watched the anime and I found out that it was based on a manga, I had been wanting to read it to know how it goes and even maybe surpass where the anime stopped for now, to see where it will go after the anime. It would also fall into author you've never read, and would also fall into fantasy sci-fi. The next book on my TBR, I have to explain a little bit. It is a middle grade book. It is a book that I got whenever I was in grade school because I felt like I had to have the entire series. Even though I only read, I think, the first 3 books of the series in grade school, and there are like over 30 books in this series. I don't have all of the books, but I have a pretty good chunk of them, especially since I didn't even read them all. The book is Moonrise by Aaron Hunter. It is a book about cats. It centers all on cats. That's all this is about. There are humans, but they're not looked upon fondly. They are not the narrators. This book, oh, and they do not live in civilization. They live out in the wild on their own. The second book and the second chunk of prophecies. Where does it land on my book bingo? It actually may fall into 3. I know 2 for sure, but possibly 3 different ones. It might fall into Caught in the Rain. It might fall into that one, I'm not sure. But I know for sure it falls into In the Wilderness. And it also contains a cat, because the entire thing's about a cat. So I'm hoping it'll fall into 3, but it'll definitely fall into 2 for sure. So let's move on to my next book. The next book on my TBR is the 8th volume of Black Butler. I've watched all there is of the anime. I'm behind in the manga because it's a little hard for me to buy it because it is $13 a book, which is a little steep for me. You'll see later, I usually buy my books on discount if I can, like with some sort of discount, some sort of sale. I'm not gonna say any spoilers, so I'm only gonna say like what the series is about. A boy, Earl, named CL Phantom Hive, has a demon butler by his side. The butler's in it for his soul. That's explained really early on. It's known really early on. This book and the anime has a special place in my heart because the anime was actually the first anime I have ever watched knowing it was an anime. I had watched Pokemon, I watched Yu-Gi-Oh! And all that stuff before I watched the anime, but I always saw them as cartoons. I didn't even know what anime was. Because Pokemon is technically an anime. So is Beyblade, so is Yu-Gi-Oh! And I've watched all 3 of those. Not completely, but I would watch them whenever they were on TV and I could. And I never considered them an anime because I didn't even know what it was. But this one was the first thing I watched knowing it was an anime. Alright, so let's just move on to where it falls on my book bingo. It can land into possibly 3 categories. I know for sure it will land in set in Europe because it is set in London, England. Now the 2 I'm not sure about is Contains a Cat, because there's a character in this book that is obsessed with cats. So I'm not sure if there will be a cat in this or not because I haven't read it yet. And Caught in the Rain, because I've watched this part of the anime and I can't remember if they're in the rain or not in this. So I'm gonna figure that out whenever I read it. It might land in this as well. On to the next book. This next book is the final book of my TBR, and you may be like, oh my god, you haven't read that book? You're gonna be starting a booktube, mainly with young adult books, and you haven't read that book? But yes, I know, I haven't read it. It's been on my shelf. I think I've had it since freshman year, and I'm a senior. The last book on my TBR is Throne of Glass. Now, it's not the last one on my TBR for any particular reason other than that's just where it fell on my stacks. I haven't read it because there were so many other books I would get caught up with, and typically I get a lot of books from the library, and if I already have the book, I don't want to get it from the library. That's pointless. I don't even know what this book's really about. I know it's about assassin, and I know it was supposed to be a Cinderella retelling, but I don't know if it actually is or not. I honestly don't know much about this book. Where does it fall on my book bingo? This book can be in 5 different spaces. The beginning of a series. It can also fall into been wanting to read. Author you've never read. It can fall into fantasy and sci-fi. I don't know if it actually falls into this or not, but I just went on ahead and put in fairy tale retelling as well. The reason why I did that is because I know it was supposed to be, but I don't know if it actually is or not. That's what I'm doing with this book. I am looking forward to reading it, to be honest. I am looking forward to reading this book to see what exactly it's about, see if it lived up to the hype or not, because I remember this was a really, really hype book, and it still is pretty popular. So I'm waiting to see if it lives up to that expectation for me or not. And that was the last of my books. Will I get a bingo this month? I should get a bingo this month if I read all the books on my TBR. And it should be this line right here. Beginning of a series. Title starts with R-O-S or E. The free space. You're welcome. Because I kind of need it too. That one book you've always been wanting to read. And author you've never read. It should fall into that line right there. So, comment down below if you plan to do the same thing or not. If you plan to use this book bingo I made. If you're not, that's fine. It might help you read. And what I plan to do is if I do get my bingo, I plan to try to reward myself in some way. I may try to buy another book, make myself peanut butter pile-ups, which the last time I made those did not end well, and I ate like over half the pan of them, but they were delicious, so I don't really regret it. I am going to now move on to what I've been playing during quarantine. As I promised, during quarantine, I haven't been doing it a whole lot because I've been busy with other things, but I have been playing my video games as well. The main video game I've been playing is Persona 5. I've also been playing a little bit of Shadow of the Colossus. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and maybe leave a comment down below. Are you going to use this book bingo, or what other books are you reading this month? Just let me know down below in the comments. See you next video. Bye-bye.